Final transmission from Earth. You began this, we'll finish it. Part 1. The day the sky burned. Commander stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station 7 when the sky changed forever. She had been watching Earth below, the blue and green marble that humanity called home when the first ships appeared. They did not come slowly. They did not send warnings. One moment the stars were empty, and the next moment they were filled with darkness. The fleet stretched across the horizon like a metal storm. Thousands of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The biggest ship, the one they would later learn was called the Eternal Arbiter, moved into position directly above Earth. It was so large that it blocked the sun over half of Europe. People on the ground looked up and saw their sky disappear. His hands shook as she watched the displays light up with emergency signals. Every alarm on the station screamed at once. Around her, officers ran to their posts, shouting orders that nobody could hear over the noise. She had trained for war her entire life. She had prepared for conflicts with other nations, for terrorist attacks, for accidents in space. She had never prepared for this. The message came on every frequency at the same moment. Every radio, every screen, every communication device on Earth and in orbit received the same transmission. The voice was calm and cold, translated into every human language simultaneously. Species of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Dominion. Your worlds now belong to us. Your people now serve us. Resistance is not advised. Resistance is extinction. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender your governments, your militaries, and your future. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Watched as panic spread across the planet below. She could see the cities lighting up with emergency broadcasts. She could imagine the billions of people looking up at that massive ship, feeling smaller than they had ever felt before. For 12,000 years, they had conquered this part of the galaxy. They had absorbed hundreds of species into their dominion. None had refused. None had survived refusing. In a small communications room on the far side of the station, a young officer named David was doing something he should not have been doing. Instead of following evacuation protocols, he was listening. His specialty was signals intelligence, and something about the transmission bothered him. It was too clean, too perfect. There had to be more underneath. He worked through the night, ignoring the chaos around him. His fingers moved across keyboards while the station shook from distant explosions. They had begun destroying orbital defenses, casual demonstrations of power meant to break human spirit. David did not look up. He kept working. By morning, he found it. Hidden beneath the main transmission was a secondary signal, a communication between commanders that they had not bothered to encrypt. Why would they? They did not consider humans intelligent enough to intercept it. David listened to the translation his computer provided, and his blood turned to ice. They did not want integration. They did not want servants or subjects. The word they used did not translate well, but David understood it perfectly. Livestock. Humanity was not being conquered. Humanity was being harvested. They had done this before to dozens of species. They took the useful ones as slaves and the rest as resources, biological material, food. He sent the recording to every military commander he could reach. He sent it to news stations. He sent it to anyone who would listen. The galaxy needed to know what the really were. On Earth, the world governments had gathered for an emergency session. Presidents and prime ministers, kings and generals, all connected through secure channels, all facing the same impossible choice. Surrender meant survival, at least for some. Resistance meant death for everyone. The Secretary General of the United Nations, an old woman named who had survived 3 wars and 2 assassination attempts, listened to the arguments. She heard the generals say they could not win. She heard the scientists say the technology was centuries ahead of humanity. She heard the diplomats beg for negotiation, for time, for anything that might delay the inevitable. Then she received David's recording. She played it for everyone. The room fell silent. The truth hung in the air like poison. Surrender did not mean survival. Surrender meant a different kind of death, slower and more terrible. Stood up. She was 73 years old, and she knew she would not survive what came next. But she also knew that some things mattered more than survival. "Open a channel," she said. "All frequencies, I want them to hear this." The communications officer hesitated. "Ma'am, they'll know our position. They could." "Open it." The channel opened. His voice reached every corner of Earth, every station in orbit, and every ship in the system. "To the Dominion, we have received your terms. We have learned your true intentions. You do not seek to rule us. You seek to consume us. You have done this before. You believe you will do it again." She paused. Above Earth, the Eternal Arbiter began to move, its weapon systems powering up. Continued. "We are not your cattle. We are not your food. We are humanity. We have walked on our moon. We have touched the soil of Mars. We have looked into the hearts of stars. You think we are young and weak. You think we will kneel because we are afraid." Watching from what remained of Orbital Station 7, felt tears running down her face. Around her, officers stopped their panic and listened. "You are wrong," said. "We decline your offer. We decline your dominion. We decline your future for us. If you want our world, you will have to burn it. If you want our people, you will have to kill them. And we will make you pay for every inch of ground, every drop of blood, every single life you try to take." On the Eternal Arbiter, Archon listened to the transmission. He was ancient by human standards, over 300 years old, and he had heard this speech before. Young species always talked about courage. They always promised to fight. Within days, they always broke. He gave the order to begin the invasion. He would look back on this moment many times in the years to come. He would remember the confidence he felt, the certainty that this would be like all the others. He would remember how wrong he was. The first soldiers landed on Earth expecting fear. They found something else entirely. They found a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself, that had turned war into an art form, that had developed 1,000 ways to kill and 1,000,000 reasons to do it. They found humanity waiting for them. And humanity was angry. Final transmission from Earth. You began this, we'll finish it. Part 2, The Doctrine of Spite. 6 months into the invasion, Commander crouched in the ruins of what had once been Tokyo. The city was unrecognizable now, a maze of shattered concrete and twisted metal where fires still burned and the air tasted like ash. She had lost contact with Central Command weeks ago. She had lost most of her unit. What she had not lost was her will to fight. Beside her, a dozen survivors waited in silence. They were soldiers, scientists, construction workers, teachers. The invasion had erased the old categories. Now there were only two kinds of people on Earth, those who fought and those who could not. Above them, a troop carrier moved through the smoke-filled sky. It was heading toward a refugee camp in the mountains, carrying soldiers who would round up survivors for processing. Had seen what processing meant. She had watched the sort humans like animals, separating the useful from the disposable. She would not let it happen again. "We cannot destroy that ship," said the man beside her. His name was, and he had been an engineer before the war. "Their armor is too strong. Our weapons cannot penetrate it." Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. "We do not need to destroy it. We need to make them afraid." She had spent months studying tactics. They were efficient, organized, and completely predictable. They had conquered so many species so easily that they had forgotten how to adapt. They expected resistance to follow patterns, to make sense, to have goals. They did not understand humans at all. The carrier passed overhead, gave the signal. From a dozen hidden positions, her people fired not at the ship but at the buildings around it. Carefully placed explosives brought down towers of rubble, creating a cage of debris around the carrier. The ship stopped, confused by the attack that had not actually hit them. then activated the device he had built from scavenged parts and stolen technology. It was crude, ugly, and dangerous. It was also brilliant. The electromagnetic pulse disabled the carrier's shields for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds was enough. The rocket-propelled grenades hit the carrier from every direction. The ship fell from the sky and crashed into the ruins below. There were no survivors. Looked at the burning wreckage. They had lost 3 people in the attack. They had used almost all their remaining ammunition. By any logical measure, it was a terrible trade. They had thousands more ships. But somewhere, a commander was learning that his troops were not safe. Somewhere, a pilot was looking at the ground and feeling fear. And somewhere, refugees were still alive because a transport never arrived. This was the doctrine of spite. In an underground bunker beneath what had once been Lagos, David sat surrounded by screens and equipment. He had not seen sunlight in 4 months. He had not slept more than 3 hours at a time since the invasion began. He did not care. He had work to do. They controlled the skis, but they could not control information. David had built a network of hidden transmitters, satellite uplinks, and old-fashioned radio stations. Every day, he intercepted communications. Every day, he broadcast the truth to resistance cells around the world. Today, he was doing something different. Today, he was talking. "This is the voice of Earth," he said into his microphone. His voice reached survivors in bunkers across 6 continents. "This is day 187 of the resistance. Here is what they do not want you to know." He read the numbers: casualties which they never reported, destroyed equipment which they never admitted, failed operations which they never discussed. The numbers were small compared to human losses, but they were not zero, and that mattered. Every day they tell us we cannot win. Every day we prove them wrong, not by winning battles, by refusing to lose them, by making them pay for every victory with blood they did not expect to spend. He thought about his family. His mother had died in the first week. His father had disappeared into a processing center. His sisters had escaped to the northern mountains where the presence was thinner. He might never see them again. He kept talking. "They have conquered 100 species. They have ruled for 12,000 years. They have never fought anyone like us. We do not surrender. We do not stop. We are the species that crossed oceans in wooden boats. We are the species that split the atom and walked on the moon. We are the species that fights itself for practice." Across the world, people listened. In caves and tunnels and ruined buildings, they heard his voice and remembered what they were. On the Eternal Arbiter, Archon reviewed the latest reports with growing frustration. The conquest of Earth should have taken days. It had taken months, and it was not finished. His soldiers were dying at an unacceptable rate, not from major battles, those the still won easily, but from tiny attacks, from traps, from explosions in the night. The humans did not fight like a conquered species. They did not negotiate, did not seek terms, did not try to preserve what they could. They fought like they had nothing to lose, like victory and defeat meant nothing to them, like the only thing that mattered was making the hurt. "Archon," his aide said carefully, "we have captured one of their resistance leaders. He is being interrogated now." Went to the interrogation chamber. The human inside was small and broken, his body damaged from days of questioning. But his eyes were still alive, still burning with something did not understand. "Why do you continue?" asked. "Your species cannot win this war. Your planet is destroyed. Your people are dying. What purpose does this serve?" The human laughed. It was a terrible sound, wet with blood. "You still do not understand," he said. "We know we cannot win. We knew from the first day." "Then why fight?" The human smiled. Several of his teeth were missing. "Because winning is not the point. The point is to make you remember us. The point is to make this hurt so much that the next time you look at a young species, you hesitate. You wonder if they will be like us. You feel afraid." He leaned forward, chains rattling. We are going to lose, we know this, but we are going to make sure that you never forget the price you paid. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, when your children learn about Earth, they will learn that some species do not break. Some species bite back. Had the human executed, but he could not forget those words. He could not forget the look in those eyes. That night, for the first time in his 300 years, Archon dreamed of fire. He dreamed of humans in the darkness, waiting. He dreamed of a war that would never end. In Tokyo, prepared for another attack. In Lagos, David continued his broadcast. Across the burning earth, humanity kept fighting. Not to win. To be remembered. Final transmission from Earth. You began this, we'll finish it. Part 3, The Long Night. 5 years had passed since the sky burned. The Earth that remembered no longer existed. 60% of the surface was poisoned, irradiated, or scorched beyond recognition. 8 billion people had become 2 billion, scattered across underground cities and hidden settlements. The sun rarely broke through the smoke and ash that covered the sky. The had won. By every calculation, every measurement, every standard of galactic conquest, they had won. Earth was broken. Humanity was dying. And yet the war continued. Walk through the tunnels beneath what had once been the Pacific seabed. The underground city stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a maze of chambers and corridors carved by desperate hands. 40 million people lived here now, in the darkness, building weapons and raising children who had never seen the sky. She had changed in 5 years. Her left arm was gone, replaced by a mechanical limb built from salvaged technology. A scar ran across her face where shrapnel had nearly killed her. She walked with a limp from an injury that had never healed properly. But her eyes were the same as they had always been, sharp and unbroken. "Commander," said her aide, a young woman who had been 12 when the invasion began, "the council is ready." Nodded and entered the command center. Around a metal table sat the leaders of humanity's remaining military forces. They were tired, worn, and angry. They had been angry for 5 years. Report said. General, who commanded the European resistance, spoke first. "We destroyed 3 more processing centers last month, freed about 10,000 people before they could be shipped off-world, lost 200 fighters in the process." Admiral, who led what remained of humanity's space forces, continued. "We have 17 functional ships now, all of them built from wreckage, held together with welding and stubbornness. They still control everything beyond low Earth orbit, but we have been hitting their supply lines when we can." Doctor, who oversaw the scientific division, leaned forward. "We have finally completed the reverse engineering of their shield technology. We cannot copy it exactly. We do not have the materials, but we understand how it works. More importantly, we understand its weaknesses." Listen to each report. Small victories, tiny steps, nothing that would change the course of the war. Then a new voice spoke. It came from the communication system, transmitted from a bunker on the other side of the world. "This is the voice of Earth." David's face appeared on the screens. He looked older too, his hair gray, his face lined with exhaustion, but his voice was still strong. "I have news," he said. "Important news. Our broadcasts have been reaching farther than we knew. Last week I received a response." The room went silent. David continued. "There are other species in space. Conquered species, enslaved species, species that have been under the dominion for centuries. They have been watching us. They have been listening to our transmissions, and they are starting to remember what resistance looks like." Felt something she had not felt in years: hope. 3 species have made contact," David said. They were conquered long ago. They believed resistance was impossible. They believed they were invincible. Then they saw us. They saw a young species fight back against impossible odds and refuse to die. They want to know how we do it. They want to know if they can do it too. General shook his head. This does not change anything. We are still losing. They are still stronger. You are wrong, said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. This changes everything. We have been fighting to make them remember us, but we can do something better. We can make them afraid of what they created. She stood up and walked to the central display. A map of space appeared, showing hundreds of conquered worlds. The empire is built on fear, she said. They win because everyone believes they will win, but we have proven that belief wrong. Every day we survive, every battle we fight, every transmission David sends, it shows the galaxy that they can be hurt. If other species start to fight back, they will have to divide their forces. They will have to fight wars on multiple fronts. They will have to spend resources they were not planning to spend. Admiral understood. We become the spark, the example. We do not need to defeat them ourselves. We just need to show others it can be done. 3,000 kilometers above Earth, the Eternal Arbiter still hung in the sky. It had been damaged in a dozen attacks but never destroyed. It was a symbol of power, a reminder that humanity was conquered. Had been planning an attack on it for 2 years. Everyone said it was impossible. The ship was too well defended, too massive, too important for it to leave vulnerable. It is time, she said. We hit the Arbiter, not to destroy it completely. We do not have the power for that, but to hurt it, to show the galaxy that even their greatest symbol can bleed. The attack came 3 months later. 17 human ships built from wreckage and hope rose from hidden bases around the world. They were joined by volunteers in armed shuttles, in modified cargo vessels, in anything that could fly and carry a weapon. The defenses were overwhelming. Human ships died by the dozens in the first minutes. Watched from her command vessel as friends she had known for years vanished in balls of fire. She did not turn away. She did not hesitate. All ships, she said, concentrate fire on the main engine section, everything we have. The surviving ships threw themselves at the Eternal Arbiter. Most of them were destroyed before they got close, but some made it through. Nuclear weapons, antimatter charges, everything humanity had left struck the flagship of the fleet. When the explosions cleared, the Eternal Arbiter still existed, but it was burning. Massive sections of its hull had been torn away. It listed to one side, crippled, no longer the perfect symbol of unstoppable power. Archon survived. He stood on his damaged bridge and watched the human ships retreat. He had won the battle. He had killed thousands of humans for every that died. But across the galaxy, enslaved species saw the footage of his burning flagship. They saw the smoke rising from the ship that had conquered their ancestors. They saw proof that they could be hurt. And they began to plan. David broadcast the images to every corner of space. His voice accompanied the footage. The Eternal Arbiter burns. Their greatest ship, their proudest symbol, damaged by a species they called primitive. They told you resistance was impossible. They lied. If we can do this, so can you. Remember who you were before they came. Remember what it feels like to fight. In the darkness of space, something began to change. Old hatreds woke up. Old hopes returned. The empire that had stood for 12,000 years felt its first tremors. And humanity, dying and defiant, smiled in the dark. Final transmission from Earth. You began this, we'll finish it. Part 4, The Reckoning. 8 years after the invasion began, Commander stood on the bridge of a warship that was not built by human hands. The vessel had been constructed by one of the 3 species that had answered humanity's call. It was sleek and powerful, designed by engineers who had spent 3 centuries pretending to be obedient while secretly remembering how to fight. Around her, the human coalition fleet prepared for the first offensive operation outside the Sol system. 50 ships crewed by humans, and 4 species that had been conquered by 4 species that had chosen to rise together. The war had changed. On Earth, 2 billion humans still fought and survived in their underground cities. They controlled the surface, but they had never managed to root out the resistance. Every year they lost soldiers to ambushes, sabotage, and the endless, grinding refusal of humanity to die. And now they faced something worse than stubborn prey. They faced a rebellion. Looked at the tactical display. Their target was a supply station that served 3 conquered worlds. Destroying it would not end the war, but it would free millions of enslaved beings and prove that the coalition could strike anywhere. "All ships report ready," said her first officer, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms who called himself. "The garrison has not detected our approach." "They would not expect us this far from Saul," said. "They still think of us as trapped animals." "They will learn otherwise." The attack was swift and brutal. Human tactics combined with technology and ferocity overwhelmed the station's defenses. Within hours, the facility was captured and its prisoners freed. Thousands of beings from a dozen species stepped out of their cells and saw their liberators for the first time. Many of them wept. Some could not believe it was real. A few asked the question that had heard many times before. How did you do this? They are invincible." She always gave the same answer. "No one is invincible. They just want you to believe they are." Back on Earth, David prepared his most important broadcast. For 8 years, he had been the voice of Earth, speaking to survivors and slaves across the galaxy. Now he had something different to say. He sat in his bunker, surrounded by the equipment that had become his life. He was 53 years old. His hair was completely white. He had not left this underground facility in 6 years, but his voice could reach every corner of space, and that was all that mattered. "To all beings living under the Dominion," he began, "I speak to you today not as a victim but as a witness. I have seen things they do not want you to see. I have recorded truths they want buried forever." He played the testimonies he had collected. Survivors from Earth describing the processing centers. Escaped slaves from other worlds confirming that humanity's fate was not unique. Intercepted communications revealing the scale of their harvesting operations across the galaxy. They call themselves a dominion. They call their conquest integration. They call their victims resources, but we know what they truly are: parasites, predators. They have fed on the galaxy for 12,000 years. They have consumed species you will never know existed. They have built their empire on bones and silence. He paused, letting the words settle across the stars. "But the silence is ending. Earth still fights. They have risen, they have risen, they have risen, and more will follow, because we have proven something they never wanted anyone to know. They can be hurt. They can be beaten. They can be afraid." On a place called Prime that had known peace for 8,000 years, Archon received reports that made his blood run cold. Uprisings on 12 worlds. Supply lines cut in 3 sectors. Coalition ships appearing in territories that should have been secure. And now something unthinkable. "Archon," his aide reported, voice trembling, "we have detected human vessels in our home system." It was a small strike force. 6 ships, barely enough to threaten a minor outpost, but they had come to Prime. They had crossed the galaxy, slipped past every defense, and entered the system that had not seen enemy action in. They did not attack civilian targets. They did not attempt to damage infrastructure. They struck one target and one target only: the Hall of Eternal Triumph, where they displayed trophies from every species they had conquered. The building burned for 3 days. Inside it, artifacts from 100 dead civilizations turned to ash. The message was clear: your victories mean nothing. Your history can be erased just as easily as you erased others. Watched the flames from his palace window. He was 350 years old. He had overseen the conquest of 17 species. He had never imagined he would see fire in his own sky. "They must be destroyed," he said. "All of them. Earth must be sterilized. No survivors, no remnants, no possibility of continuation. Archon, our forces are stretched thin. The rebellions. I do not care about the rebellions. Kill the source and the rebellions will collapse. Earth created this. Earth must end. He gave the order to assemble the largest fleet that had deployed in centuries. Every available ship, every weapon, every soldier that could be spared. They would go to Earth, and they would end this species that had caused so much trouble. In her quarters aboard the Coalition flagship, received the intelligence report. She read it twice to make sure she understood. They were coming. Not a garrison force, not an occupation fleet, but an armada designed for extermination. Hundreds of ships, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. She thought about everything humanity had survived. The invasion, the occupation, 8 years of darkness and fire. They had bled for every day, sacrificed everything they had, inspired a galactic rebellion that was still growing. And now they wanted to end it all. She opened a communication channel to Earth. David's face appeared on the screen. "You have seen the reports," she said. He nodded. "The fleet will arrive in 3 months. Can you evacuate anyone?" "We have been building colony ships in secret for 6 years. They are already leaving, carrying what we can save. Seeds, genetic material, cultural records, our future whatever form it takes." Closed her eyes. "We cannot stop that fleet, not even with the Coalition. They outnumber us 50 to 1. "I know," David said, "but we do not have to stop them, we just have to make them pay, one last time." "David, this is what we always planned for from the beginning. We knew we might not survive, but we decided to make sure they would never forget us." He smiled, and for a moment he looked young again. "It has been an honor fighting beside you, Commander." "The honor was mine." She cut the channel and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, a armada was preparing to destroy her. Somewhere out there, humanity was about to make its last stand. She began planning the defense of Earth. Final transmission from Earth. "You began this, we'll finish it." Part 5, Final Transmission. The Armada entered the Sol system like a tide of steel and fire. 300 warships, each one designed to break worlds. Archon stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and watched Earth grow larger in the... This time there would be no occupation, no processing, no survivors. "Begin the approach," he ordered. "Destroy everything in orbit, then burn the surface. I want nothing left alive." His tactical officers began their work. The fleet moved into formation, weapons charging, sensors scanning for any sign of resistance. They expected to find the scattered remnants of a broken species. They expected fear. They found something else. "Archon," the sensor officer said, confusion in his voice, "we are detecting multiple contacts, many contacts from everywhere." Looked at the display and felt his heart stop. From behind Mars, from the asteroid belt, from the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, from positions scattered across the entire system, signals lit up like stars. Ships emerged from hiding, not dozens, hundreds. Human ships, built in secret over 8 years. Coalition vessels that had slipped into the system weeks before. Armed transports and converted cargo haulers and welded-together wrecks that had no business flying. Every ship that humanity and its allies could gather had come to defend Earth. "Impossible," whispered. "They were supposed to be broken." On the bridge of her command vessel, watched the fleet with cold eyes. She knew the numbers. Even with everything they had gathered, the humans and their allies were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Their ships were weaker. Their weapons were inferior, their crews were exhausted. None of that mattered. "All ships," she said, her voice carrying across the fleet. "This is Commander, you know why we are here. You know what they came to do. 8 years ago they came to our world and told us to surrender. We said no. Today they come to finish what they started, and we are going to say no again." She paused, looking at the faces on her screens. Human faces, faces and faces, all of them tired, all of them ready. "We may not survive this day. but we are going to make sure they remember it forever. Every ship they lose is a ship that cannot threaten another world. Every minute we delay them is a minute our colony ships get farther away. Every life we take is proof that they can be hurt." She drew a breath. They wanted to harvest us. They wanted to consume us and forget we ever existed. Instead, we are going to be the species that made them bleed. We are going to be the story that conquered species tell their children. We are going to be the proof that resistance is never futile. All ships attack. The battle was apocalyptic. Human vessels threw themselves at the fleet with desperate courage. They died by the dozens in the first minutes, but each one took enemies with them. Ramming attacks, nuclear detonations, pilots flying damaged ships into engine sections and weapons arrays. They had never seen anything like it. Their enemies were supposed to flee when outmatched. They were supposed to surrender when defeat was certain. These humans fought like they were already dead and had nothing left to lose. Ship was hit 4 times in the first hour. Each time, damage control teams held it together. Each time she kept fighting. "Target the command ships," she ordered. "Make them feel this personally." Coalition vessels swept through the formation, spreading chaos. The ships used tactics they had developed in secret for centuries. The vessels carried weapons that no one had seen before. The fighters flew patterns that seemed suicidal until they started working. On Earth, David watched the battle through sensor feeds in his bunker. The sky above him was filled with fire as weapons struck the surface and defenders struck back. The planetary defense systems, hidden for years, emerged and added their fury to the battle. He knew it was not enough. They were still winning. Slowly, brutally, they were grinding through the defense fleet. Soon they would reach Earth and finish their work. He opened his communication channel, not to the fleet this time, not to Earth's defenders, to everyone. "This is the voice of Earth," he said. His signal reached across the system, across space, to every being who could hear. "What you are seeing is the battle of Saul. They have come to destroy us. They will probably succeed." He watched another human ship die on his screens. He kept talking. "But look at what they are paying for that victory. Look at how many ships they are losing. Look at how hard they have to fight to kill a species they called primitive. We have hurt them. We have proven that they can be hurt, and that proof will outlive us." On the bridge of the eternal judgment, Archon listened to the broadcast. He should have jammed it, blocked it, silenced it. But he could not stop watching the battle. He could not stop counting his losses. They were winning, but they were losing ships faster than they had lost in the past century combined. His vessel was dying. The engines were failing, the weapons were depleted, half the crew was dead. But she was still flying, still fighting, still refusing to stop. "Commander," said, his gray face covered in blood from a head wound, "the eternal judgment is within ramming range." She looked at the flagship on her screen, the ship that carried, the symbol of everything that had done to Earth. "Set collision course," she said. "Commander, it has been an honor serving with you." The ship accelerated. Weapons tore into it, shredding armor, killing crew. It did not matter. Held the controls herself, steering through the fire, aiming for the bridge. She thought about Earth, about the cities she would never see again, about the children who would grow up on distant worlds, carrying humanity's future. She thought about 8 years of war, about the friends she had lost, about the price they had paid. "You came to our home," she said, though no one could hear her. "You killed our children. You thought we would break." The ship struck the eternal judgment. The explosion was visible from Earth. The flagship broke apart, its hull torn open, its systems failing. Archon died in fire just as he had made so many others die. The fleet wavered, their commander was dead, their flagship was destroyed, and still the humans kept coming. In his bunker, David activated the final protocol. Across Earth's surface, hidden silos opened. Every remaining nuclear weapon, every antimatter charge, Every piece of destructive technology that humanity had saved for this moment launched into the sky. They did not target the planet, they targeted the fleet. The sky turned white. When it cleared, a third of the remaining ships were debris. The survivors ran. For the first time in 12,000 years, a fleet retreated from a battlefield. Broken, bleeding, they fled toward the edge of the system. David opened his channel one last time. To the Dominion and all who serve them. This is Earth. We remember what you did. We remember every life you took, every species you consumed, every child who died because you believed yourselves gods. He coughed. His bunker was damaged, filling with smoke. He did not stop. You began this war thinking it would be easy. You thought we were weak. You thought we would beg. You were wrong. He stood up, looking at screens that showed the burning sky and the retreating fleet. This message is not a surrender. This is not a treaty. This is a promise. We are coming. Every world you have taken, every species you have enslaved, we are coming for them. We will hunt you across centuries if we must. He smiled. His voice was steady. You began this. We will finish it. This is the final transmission from Earth. We will see you among the stars. 50 years later, a human ambassador stood before the Galactic Assembly, a council of free species that had not existed a generation before. Behind her, holographic displays showed the former Dominion, now shattered into 100 liberated worlds. She was old, her hair white, her face lined with years of struggle, but her eyes still burned with the fire that had never died. You have asked me to explain humanity's role in the galaxy's transformation, she said. You want to understand how we did the impossible. She looked at the assembly, representatives from species that had been slaves when she was born, free beings who owed their liberty to a war that had started before they were alive. We did not do the impossible, she said. We simply refused to accept what others called possible. We refused to die when we were supposed to die. We refused to stop when we were supposed to stop. We looked at a 12,000-year empire and said no. She paused, remembering faces she would never see again. David, millions of others who had given everything. They asked us once why we kept fighting when we could not win. The answer is simple. Some things matter more than survival. Dignity matters. Freedom matters. The refusal to kneel matters. She straightened her shoulders. We did not defeat the alone. Every species in this room played their part. But we showed you what was possible. We showed you that empires can fall. We showed you that the strong are not always right. We showed you that sometimes the smallest species can change everything. She smiled. They wanted us to be their cattle. Instead, we became their ending. Let that be humanity's legacy. When the universe said kneel, we stood. When the universe said die, we fought. And when the universe said impossible, we did it anyway. She raised her hand in salute to the assembly. We are humanity, and we do not break.